Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with a virtual tasting society. My name is Vadim Perlovsky, and today we're excited to welcome back a regular in our group. Hunter Leese is here to talk about not one, not two, but three of his Irish brands. And we have some spectacular limited editions, as well as one or two core expressions. But we definitely have a fun and kind of eccentric lineup, everything from sourced to distilled yourself, single pot, single malt, all over the place. And it's going to be a fun tasting. So get your glasses ready for your samples. If you're not wearing green and it's not St. Patrick's Day, but feel free to pinch yourself. Dreams do come true. Hunter's back, and we are here to drink some Irish whiskey. So I don't think I need to introduce Hunter, at least by now. Everybody should know and love him. But Hunter, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us what we're tasting today and then what we've got on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, again, my name's Hunter. Many of you know me from across the years of being able to join you guys for these lovely sessions. But yeah, we've got six whiskeys, that we have here today across all three brands. I work at Hoadley & Co. We're the importer here in the States for Writer's Tears, the Irishman, Dingle, among others, your Nikas, Luxardos of the world. Morris Australian whiskey, IBHL portfolio out of Scotland. So we got a whole stable of different things. Also do some distillation ourselves here in San Francisco. So we are a San Francisco-based company with a rich history in distilling, going back to Junipero Gin, Old Potrero, 100% malted rye. As far as like innovators in their own categories of craft spirits. So that's a bit of background about us. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So I will get started with what we are. As far as the order goes, I don't know if it's been laid out. I think we've does everybody have the order here? I'll just lay it out. So
let's announce it. Yep.
We'll start with Writer's Tears Redhead. After that, Dingle Single Malt. After that, we'll have another single malt from Dingle. It's Breed or Breege or Lala Breege. I'll talk a little bit about that in that whole series. Writer's Tears Cask Strength, the 2023 vintage. Then the Japanese cask strength, and then the 17-year-old. So we're finishing with three cask strengths. Breed is nearly cask strength. It's not quite. It's at a 50.5, but we'll kind of climb the ladder. Every single one of the things we have here is over 46% and non-chill filtered. It has been a lovely, had some lovely time of maturation, really across Ireland. So I'll get through that. Through kind of the ins and outs of all those as we move through. But if you know me, while I do get to work on the Irish brands, my true passion is also for Irish whiskey. So I'm thankful to have that, and I always try to explore and keep tasting things. But I do believe we bring one of the best and most unique whiskey portfolios, but certainly Irish whiskey portfolios here in the States. So. With that, I can kind of kick it off. If there aren't any questions to get us kind of going through, and stop me if you need a refresher or have any questions about single malt, single pot still, grain whiskey in Ireland, blends, anything like that. And I'll kind of try to touch on those as we move through and give you a bit of a history lesson, as I always like to do. So forgive me if I'm repeating some things in the past, but I hopefully have some new tidbits here for you as well. So kicking off. Writer's Tears Redhead right here. So if you don't know, Redhead is what the name we give it because we use 100% Oloroso sherry butts in the full maturation of this. It's the only Writer's Tears SKU or whiskey that we make that's going to have full maturation in a whiskey barrel. We do a lot of blending. We do a lot of starts in bourbon for that, but this is fully matured in Oloroso sherry butts. It is a single malt whiskey, so versus the rest of the portfolio, which tends to be more on the pot still side. So even our copper pot blend, that's about 65% pot still whiskey, 35% single malt. We now do have a single pot still, which I think we've tasted here before. If not, there's always next time as well. But oh, there you go. Are we doing that tonight? Okay, great. I was like, I haven't, but
I'm doing it tonight, but
okay, great. That's another lovely whiskey, but save that for another day. But this is probably, it's getting towards the unicorn kind of status at this point. What we have is what we have. We have about, I think, 3 or 4 cases left in our warehouse. You'll be able to get it in a few states, mostly on the eastern seaboard, but it is available in California as well. So because it is a single malt, it was our first new expression with the Writer's Tears brand. Outside of, so after Copper Pot, you had, I guess Double Oak may have been the second. No, it was a cognac cask. And then the first kind of core SKU, the first extra SKU was Redhead. That was an addition here. We never had it stateside. We happened to be able to snag some off last year, bottle it in 750s, and so this was our first and only shot of it. So it'll be a great whiskey to try. Redhead, well, it does refer to the Oloroso and the kind of the color that it imparts. It does have that kind of deeper amber, has a little bit of strawberry kind of rose notes to it, especially in the light. But that's all from those sherry butts, those wine casks is picking up some of that color. Another thing is people also associate redheads a lot with Ireland, which is funny because it is it's very much these days associated with Irish folks and Irish colors, other Irish colored hair, but it actually, if you don't know, Dublin was originally established actually as a Viking raiding outpost, and the Irish gene, as it goes back to the Celts and kind of Picts and what have you, who originally settled the island, redhead's not part of that that genetic disposition. It actually all came from really the Norse folks and any Scandinavian raiders that were coming in. So that was the Viking contribution to Irish heritage was likely the redhead aspect that's pretty well associated. So just a fun fact for you on that one. If you're a historian and I'm saying that wrong, definitely correct me, but that's as far as I know on that one. So it is at 46% non-chill filtered, and it finishes its life down in County Carlow. New exciting news though on the Writer's Tier side. So I don't know, going back to 2019 was when Writer's Tears parted ways with Disaronno, that company of international fame. They had built a distillery together down in Royal Oak in County Carlow. They broke ground in 2013, 2014, pretty much right when the distillery finished is when they parted ways. So we've been sourcing whiskey for the time being. I can basically, there's 3 places we're getting it from now, but like 99% of the whiskey we're getting is from 2 places. The place down in County Cork, also known as Middleton, IDL down there is where any of our pot stills coming from. Again, 98%, and then the other single malt pieces are coming from up in Bushmills. So this would be originally distilled up at the old Bushmills distillery, the oldest licensed distillery in the world. So just for a sourcing aspect, Vadim, the single pot still you have there is Great Northern, just for reference. So that's our first kind of use of that product. It was more just built, with Bernard alongside as these other whiskeys were. And I can kind of touch on that as well. People know, those distilleries these days from their pedigree and what they've been, and also the big brands that are coming out of there. But back in the day when Bernard Walsh was first getting started, that was back in 1998, 1999. Nobody was really sourcing from him. So he's one of the few people who's graced with a pretty long-term contract there and worked closely with the master distillers to develop recipes, kind of revive some time-honored recipes as well, and none of these are any different. But that's all to say, we had some exciting news this year. Just announced that there's about a 36 million euro investment into a new distillery, also in County Carlow. Right in the river, it's taking over an old mill, and we're still working on permitting now, but that should break ground sometime, hopefully later this year. So we're going to be able to start taking people and distilling whiskey out of there. We will have pot stills, which was everything that the current lineup is done on. And then they'll probably install some grain stills for column stills for future products, or even just doing some contract stuff as well. So that's the exciting news.
Hunter, sorry to interrupt. Did I hear you correctly when you said that you're not making any more redhead?
Probably some whiskey laid down. We don't have plans to necessarily continue making it.
I thought it was part of your standard lineup. So
it is a core offering. Don't take my word for it. That's still being worked out. But that whiskey might shift over to the Irishman. So underneath the same umbrella, you have the Irishman and you have Writer's Tears. Writer's Tears has always been kind of more pot still forward. This was early on in the brand kind of genesis. So that kind of pot still identity wasn't necessarily clearly defined. The Irishman has definitely leaned more into single malts. So as far as like within the portfolio, for just from a product perspective, this might end up going over towards that side of the portfolio just because it makes more sense over there with our age statements, our other single malts, some other new innovations coming out. With Writer's Tears, we've had some new innovations around single pot stills. So with our first kind of solely single pot still expression, and then more recently, we just did a very limited run of that same single pot still. Instead of finished in PX and Marsala casks, it's finished in tequila, añejo tequila barrels. So kind of leaning more on that side of things from the innovation front. It's just kind of refining the product lineup. We still have some laid down. It's a delicious whiskey. It's actually one of my favorites personally. It is pretty truly unique within the portfolio, but it just doesn't really fit our architecture. And that would be the reason. It's just to kind of help refine that. We're up to 11 SKUs just in Writer's Tears. So it's kind of, we're trying to redefine how we go to market. So it's not for lack of want or lack for appreciation of it, just doesn't really fit the profile.
Where does one find the whole list of SKUs?
You can go on the website, Writer's Tears, or at walshwhiskey.com is the kind of the easiest way to find that.
Some of us have the completionist bug, which is very annoying.
No, totally. And the good news is at some point, you may not be able to get them today, but in the last year, you would have been able to get everything in the portfolio here stateside, which this would have been the first year that's actually the case, which is pretty neat. So, we went from 0 to 60 pretty quickly. Back in 2019, we had three expressions plus some single casts here and there, but 3 true expressions. I said double oak was the second expression. It was not. It just dawned on me. Cast strength was our second expression. So chapter number 2 should be the cast strength, which verified. Nope, it says 4 on here. So redhead was 2, double oak was 3, cast strength was 4. There you go. Sorry. Now that we're at 11, I've now lost it, which order things have come out in. But quick fun fact for you too. You guys are familiar with Copper Pot, our kind of core SKU within the Writer's Tears lineup across the board. When that first was developed, before it got here stateside, it didn't come stateside until 2016, 2017-ish is when the brand made it over here. But when that SKU first came out in 2013, 2014, it was right before they did the new kind of updated technical file for single pot still whiskey. When that was developed, it was actually would be called the single pot still whiskey at the time. So even though now it's a blended whiskey, that was originally developed as a kind of a classic interpretation of a pot still whiskey, despite it having 35% of single malt whiskey in there. So when they changed the technical file, we became a blended whiskey, even though it was before then a pot still whiskey. So fun fact for you there. Do you guys? Many of you guys know the background of kind of Writer's Tears, what it's inspired by, but what that blend kind of comes from originally
in the room today, so please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Refresh.
So I'm happy to harp on this, and actually the cast strength is the Copper Pot blend, so it is relevant down the line, taken to a cast strength. So Writer's Tears was inspired by the kind of golden age of Irish literature. You look at, in rough terms, right around the 1900 mark. Right around the turn of century there. James Joyce, George Bernard Shaw, Lady Gregory. Again, we're fluctuating here into, mid late 1800s into the early 1900s, but really the two stalwarts that we're inspired by mostly would be James Joyce and George Bernard Shaw. If you pick up a bottle, what's on there, and I'll forget this off the top of my head. I'll look it up here in a second, but it's actually an excerpt from a Joyce writing. So initially it wasn't when we did the repack, it's officially now a Joyce writing. So inspired by that kind of golden age of Irish literature, it was said basically that in those days when you had writer's block, looking for a little bit of creative inspiration, you'd head down to your local watering hole, your local pub, try to do some people watching, get a couple drams in you. Toshkins, as you would say in actually Irish, as opposed to dram would be the Scots. word for it, but yeah, a couple Toshkins down there. I'm saying that wrong for sure, but um, do some people watching. Try to find Oscar Wilde. Certainly, by the way, is definitely falls in that same realm, no doubt about it. I could pull up a whole slide of a fair bit. I didn't. I just want to give a quick excerpt, but he would definitely be included with some of those Irish writing greats. So kind of inspired by that, the whiskey that they would have been getting, the common Irish blend that you would have been getting at most Irish pubs in the day, would have been very similar to Copper Pot. Irish coming from a really rich history in single malt whiskey, which I'll get to kind of when we get into Dingle as well. That blend would have been a classic blend they would have had during the time. So that's kind of where it goes back to a time-honored recipe, and we're kind of putting modern flair on it. That's where the Japanese cask, it's also that same blend, but just aged in different cast finishes and what have you. So that's where the inspiration for the recipe and also the brand came from. Basically, when they're finished with their whiskey, hopefully finding a creative inspiration. It was said that they had enough, imbibed enough whiskey at the time that when they cried tears, hopefully celebrating their inspiration or just the sorrows of the day, that they would cry tears of whiskey. So that's kind of where the writer's tears name comes from. Just for a little fun there.
This is really awesome stuff. I'm sad it's gonna change a little bit.
Yeah, well, look, we'll have it for probably another out there in the market for another at least 6 months. I can't say definitively. We're still outlining what the kind of future path looks like from a SKU perspective, especially here stateside. But it's certainly not. We're not going to have more of it for much longer. There's only so much laid down right now. Doesn't mean we can't lay more down. But it's hard to get 7-year-old whiskey very quickly. We do lay everything down via contract pretty well in advance. So that's another thing too. You'll notice with our blends that we're about $40-50 for the core SKUs, Copper Pot and what have you. Most things at that price point are going to be 3, 4, 5 years old. Ours are minimum 7 years old, aged in mostly ex-bourbon to start. So anything they're going to get from Rare Steers or the Irishman is going to be minimum 7 years old, roughly. But I can kind of touch on that. And that includes Redhead for you.
Well, what batch is the Redhead on now?
It's a good question. As far as how many barrels we've gone through,
Well, mine just says batch 2. I don't think
so that that's just the chapters that we say.
Oh, okay.
It's typically married and vatted. So as far as how many batches we run, I would say we run about once a year, and these have been made since going back to 16 or 17. So call it 6-7 years. Batch number 6 or 7, probably I would say. This one being right in there, probably 6, closer to 6.
Thank you.
Yeah. We run the Redhead, I think every April or July, one of the two. Any other questions on Writer's Tears? And we'll get back to the brand here in a bit. But before I move on to Dingle, any other questions, comments? You loving it? You hating it? Hopefully it's treating you right. Great, cool. So we'll move on to got a small block here of Dingle. It's this is a brand that's all my brands are very near and dear to my heart. But nothing really, I think, evokes Ireland quite like the town of Dingle, if you've ever been down there itself, but also the people. And I think the whiskey and the culture around there kind of are really evocative of it. Vadim, you've been down with me for the annual gathering there in the town of Dingle. It's a town of 2,000 people, roughly, maybe 2,500 on a good day. And it's got 22 pubs up and down the street. That doesn't include the restaurants that also kind of dot the area. It's on one of the most beautiful parts of coastline in the world. So we get a lot of sea air influence. We're on kind of the southwestern peninsula, County Kerry. If you go maybe an hour from Tralee, kind of westward. It's the the westernmost town in all of Ireland. You step off the docks in Dingle Harbor, swim out and take a right. 3,400 miles or so, and you hit New York, or rather, I mean, you don't hit New York, but you'd hit more like Canada. But at least in North America, it's kind of the closest thing to there from Ireland. So, that being said, if you've visited there, you should definitely remember to bring a raincoat. But it's a really beautiful stretch of land. The Sleigh Head Drive right there. It's about a 30-minute drive that you leave from the town of Dingle, go up and around the coast. It's one of National Geographic's top 100 drives to do in the entire world. Ireland's graced with 2 of them, the other being the coastal route up through Giant's Causeway up near Belfast and what have you. Back to Dingle though. So we were founded back in 2012. It was 3 Irishmen, and they had originally started the Porterhouse Brewing Company, like one of the largest craft breweries in Ireland, fighting kind of against the big brands around that are dominated by Heineken and Diageo, your Guinnesses and Heinekens of the world, what have you. But they're true, especially Oliver Hughes. His true passion really was to bring whiskey back to Ireland. In 2012, there may have been 4. It's really close. There are certainly 3 distilleries in Ireland. Then you had Bushmills, IDL or Middleton down in County Cork, and then you had the Cooley Distillery, kind of right on the border up there. And until Dingle was established, I think they were in the number 5, and West Cork may have been earlier. I can't remember exactly. It was really close, 4 and 5, but doesn't matter. Dingle was the first distillery in Ireland in over 100 years to do single malt and single pot still underneath the same roof, and actually do it all themselves. From there, never sourced any whiskey. We never have. We've only used first fill casks across the board, and that's no different with our new course single malt, which is kind of the next whiskey on the list. And it's really a nod to having a really strict emphasis on high quality, really good whiskey that has true sense of place and true terroir. You look at all the whiskey brands that have come out of Ireland, and Ryer's Tears and the Irishman are some of those. And so there's no animosity here about it, but there's a lot of source whiskey coming out from West Cork, from Great Northern, from IDL, from Bushmills, from West Cork, all those kind of places that are built to do larger distillations and be able to do that. Dingle has never done that. That's always been their kind of core tenet, is to focus on their own spirit, having a true spirit that they really call their own. Being so close to the sea there with a unique water source, it's about well water, about 240 feet below the distillery. That's where we get everything from the river that runs right into the bay. If you've been to Dingle Distillery, you can see the waterway that runs right into the bay there. You look across the street, it's the beginning of the Dingle Bay. And the warehouse is about 5 minutes down the road, probably 2 or 3 kilometers, maybe max. It'd be a long walk, but you could do it. So you definitely get some of that sea air influence. You get some of that kind of coming through the whiskey across the board. And again, we use only first fill casks there. Everything's done by hand, from the mash tun to any part of the distillation is all hand done. I've been in the mash tun. I've been shoveling grain. It's very hot down there, but they do it all manually, and that's kind of part of the of what makes it truly special, and a really truly special part of the world. Oliver, one of the founders, he unfortunately passed from a heart attack suddenly a few years back, and now his son Elliot is in charge. So it's still very much a family-run company. His sister Holly does a lot of the marketing over there, so they're still very much involved in the business. Liam as well is for that. That being said, we got single malt here, 61% PX sherry cask, 39% ex bourbon. Again, all first fills. You get a lot of that flavor coming through there, and as such, it's a 5 to 6 year old whiskey. That'll in the next year or two probably grow to 6 to 7 at that. So we're constantly trying to get it better. It's a first experiment at Dingle where it wasn't just done off it was off of single barrels, kind of married together. This is actually done Solera style in a big Solera tank just to keep consistency over the years. So it's our first experiment with that. I think it's come out really nicely. I find myself going back to this, constantly. I also think just for American palates where we're used to bigger flavors, we tend to prefer, those kind of bigger sherry notes, bigger kind of that salted caramel that you're getting from that kind of sea influence. I just think it works really well, and I think it's really delicious. We are also this has been about $100. Starting in like April, May, June around, we're gonna be down to $60. And that's just because we have more supply. We're trying to get more aggressive. So it's not an everyday whiskey, but it's certainly getting close. You might even be able to find it as low as 50. So that'll be a price adjustment. We're not just trying to fire sale it. That's a true strategic move. We want this whiskey to be more enjoyed by more people. We will have some things that still slot in above there. Gives us a little bit more breathing room from that sense. So we're getting really ambitious about our whiskey programs kind of going forward. There you go. Looking at, you can see the blue shed there. It's an old I'm gonna say wood mill. I don't know exactly what they made there, but it's an old mill. So yeah, there you can see the river coming in through that stone bridge that goes right in the Dingle Bay and the Dingle Harbor. That looks good too. It's tasty. They're lovely people too. I mean, the town of 2,000 people. Everybody works at distilleries from the area, or at least lives there. So it truly is a local operation. And again, I think from what's coming out of Ireland right now, it is one of the most unique whiskeys with an absolute sense of place. So
Launch. When did you say that they started?
So distillery was finished in 2012. There's plans to do it kind of late 90s, early 2000s, but couldn't cobble the funding together. And also there's a couple financial crises and things like that. That was further, that delayed them in 2008. They had kind of planned to start, kind of building it then, but everything happened with global markets, it got delayed further. But it was finished in 2012. I couldn't tell you the exact date, but our first distillation was in late November, early December of 2012. So really call it 2013 was when we really got up and running. But the first cask was distilled, I want to say around December 7th or 8th of 2012. First whiskey cask.
Okay, thanks. I was there in 2016 and I was trying to figure out how the hell I missed the big blue shed. So
Well, it's if you're in the town, you can walk there. It's maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15. I tend to shorten all my walks in memory, but the whiskey helps do that too. But it's right outside of town. If you're going on the Sleehead Drive, you'll go right past it. So kind of on your way out of town heading west, you would pass right by it. But it is, it's close enough to town where you could walk, do a quick jaunt over there. Please come back if any of you guys are over there. We do tours Monday through Friday, so I'm happy to help facilitate anything for you guys if that would help. But it's also available on the website. Even in the winter when we're closed down for tours, I can usually I know some people, thankfully. So that's always something we can do.
cool.
You mentioned that you guys poached a rock star distiller, right? That moved over from Scotland.
Yeah, Graham Cool. So he came on 2019, 2020, something around there, right about the pandemic. He's really, had a lot of influence on the whiskey. This single malt was actually his first whiskey that came out, where I think it's got a signature somewhere on there. It might not be on this one, but it's really, he added a lot of professionalism, and I would say good regiment and just like good consistent quality making, really good cask theory behind the whiskeys he's making. At that time when he first came on, it was like, we had a lot of sherry casks, we had a lot of bourbon casks, of course. I don't know how much of the time it made up of our overall cask, but now it's about 80% of our casks that we have in house are sherry and bourbon. But there's also just a ton of just random stuff kind of sitting around. He kind of refined that, helped refine kind of, I would say, the Dingle flavor. Everything before that was done the small batch series, which are awesome whiskeys. Maybe not one or two. You wouldn't have seen those stateside. Those are quite young whiskeys. But a lot of folks around there would say so as well. But 3, 4, 5, it was kind of all different marriage of sherry, port, Madeira, bourbon, a variety of different casks that were married together. So we kind of refined that, created kind of more of a Dingle profile. And that's going to be his legacy for sure for as long as his time at Dingle goes. I mentioned this is our first core whiskey. One thing, I'll show you the bottle here. So one thing to note as part of our symbol, this is called what we would say a Renboy, like as far as WREN after the bird. They would say Ranboy. It's just an Irish accent. So Dingletown has a lot of pagan roots. It's Gaeltacht. All of Kerry is the Gaeltacht region, in particular Dingletown. What Gaeltacht means is that more than 50% of the population is Irish, speaks Irish as a first language. It's very culturally important. It's very much tied to the land. And as kind of the modernization and things like that, a lot of the Irish language has been lost to honestly going back Norman conquests, even those days, but just the Anglicization of Ireland. So you find a lot of Gaeltacht regions out west. Galway would be like one of the largest Gaeltacht populations over there as well. It's all kind of up the western coast. But those are folks who speak Irish at least on a weekly basis and are totally fluent in it. And that's what defines the Gaeltacht region. They get government funding, and it's very culturally important for them. Why did I mention that in reference to the Renboy, the Ranboy, whatever you want to call it? So going back to pagan traditions, there's a really rich history of those on the Dingle Peninsula. Any Gaeltacht region has a lot of, in Ireland in general, it goes back, to the Celts, the Picts, and those kind of Druidic traditions, those pagan traditions, if you will. The Ranboy was, there's not 1,000, there's probably 4 or 5 different stories around it. So I'll tell my personal favorite one. Christianity co-opted a lot of holidays along the way to kind of help convert the pagans and make holidays easier for them to adapt to. Wednesday, St. Stephen's Day is December 26th, and that's no different. So what the original tradition was, you'll hear a lot of different stories about this. So again, if you hear a different story, it's probably maybe true too. It's a lot of oral tradition out there. But basically, if you needed help in your fields, and as far as like scaring away vermin and kind of being a human scarecrow at that a little bit, if you look up Brandsday Dingle, you'll kind of get what I feel. If you're on your browser there, take a look. It's pretty funny. But they would go door to door, knocking on people's doors to kind of take tithes, take donations in order for them to kind of go help out on their plots of land. It's a very rural area, still is, always was. And that was kind of what they did, was to kind of, someone was designated as the Ran, and for the year. There's another piece of that tradition that goes back to St. Stephen's Day, which is St. Stephen was kind of running away from Protestants. He hid in a bush. Why it got the name for Ranboy was because he hid in a bush, and some wrens made some chirping noises, alerted his pursuers to his presence, and he was murdered as a result. And they used to go out and kill wrens every year. They don't do that anymore, but kind of that's where the garb also comes from, is that kind of looking like a bush, I guess you could say. Those are 2 stories that I kind of know as far as its genesis. But Dingle has the single largest Wren's Day celebration and the longest continuous celebration in all of Ireland, and certainly all of the world. That kind of goes hand in hand. And so it's very much part of the identity of the town, and therefore it's part of our label and our symbol. And that would be a Ranboy with a group of host of, I think it's barley and then a small scythe or sheaf, something like that. So yeah, that's just a little bit of story about kind of Dingle, the Gaeltacht region, and things like that. And that also applies to the next thing we're going to taste, which is Lallabreege. So but before I get there, for me, you're going to get a lot of apple and orchard fruit always on an Irish whiskey. That's never going to be different, at least undertones. If you get more cask influence, that's going to be the case. As we said, we use only first fills, and for a $60 whiskey, that's pretty unique out there in the world. People have mentioned you get a lot of that cherry influence. PX is going to be, that kind of the richer, that sweeter kind of influence. And I can tell you where we're getting most of the sherry casks here in a second. I can pull it up. but it's somewhere in Spain, of course, obviously being Pedro Jimenez. And then 39% ex-bourbon. The bourbon, I think, I used to kind of, a lot of people just throw bourbon in there, but when you get a first fill cask of bourbon of good quality, it has a really nice, kind of touch on Irish whiskey. You get more of those baking spices. You get a little bit more. If you've had any of their pot still or pot still 5, which was a singular bourbon whiskey, a bourbon finished whiskey, bourbon matured, not finished whiskey, it has a lot of those kind of different layers. You get that big vanilla, you get kind of that salinity, but you definitely get more of those baking spices. You can get a little bit of those undertones, but this is pretty PX forward. It's pretty bold. It's pretty robust on this whiskey, and I love this stuff. I can't put it down really. There you have it. Hopefully you also enjoy. Any questions on Dingle, this whiskey, anything like that? Feel free to jump in now while I enjoy it a little bit myself. I'll take silence as a good thing, hopefully here, that people are enjoying their whiskeys and what have you. You'll see me drink out of this is called Tuath. It's hand blown glass from Ireland. It's basically Ireland's answer to the Glencairn. I just find it a little bit more easy to enjoy the spirit and the aroma. I think I say this every time, but I typically prefer a more convex shape in my glasses than concave. Doesn't circle the kind of aroma around the bowl, which creates kind of the alcohol will sit on top of it. So you'll see a lot of people take a Glencairn and just blow off the top like that. You don't really tend to do that as much. Need to do that as much with the convex shaped glass, just because you get better airflow. So there's some science behind that, I guess you'll say. Adam, do you have you weren't here for this? Were you there for Samhain? The launch of that with the bonfire, or was that the next year?
Me?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was there for the bonfire. It was awesome.
very cool. Did you get to? I took mine home with me. My
No.
Samhain glass.
I wanted to, and I was told, no, we're collecting these. I remember we had this whole long conversation. I was like, I want this. And they're like, no, we're collecting them. And I was like, damn it.
I have a few stateside. Remind me, next week, and I'll ship one down to you.
Thank you. I
Mhm.
may have one from what was the bar we went to?
Which one? Foxy John's, Dick Max,
No, the bar in Dublin.
in Dublin.
They have their own cask?
The Palace?
Yeah, I may have one that says the Palace on it. I don't know how it ended up in my bag, but
Yeah, weird stuff. Weird
it just
stuff.
happened. And
If you do find yourself in Temple Bar in Dublin, as far as pubs go, I wouldn't always suggest things in Temple Bar. You tend to get a lot more of the party goers and things like that. But the Palace is a fantastic whiskey selection, a really great bar, and a classic pub there as well. So, if you do find yourself in Temple Bar, it's a pretty easy place to find yourself. But I would suggest that even over the Brazen Head or the like. So.
And the Palace Bar has a founding father's cask of Dingle that you can taste there. Pretty amazing.
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do. They're on. I think they bought a few. So if you've been there in the last few years and you come back, a new cask will be probably likely be there. I think they just switched over to a different one. I was talking to those guys yesterday, or not yesterday, this week.
Well, the cask we tasted was cask number 72. Let me see.
When you were there, I couldn't tell you which one they're on now, but I'll find out.
You say when I was there, like I was there without you.
That whole trip was a blur, man.
It sounds like we should do it again. That was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you get I love my Samhain glass, but the Palace Bar ones, those are class, man.
Do you remember this bar that we went to where they had
Brogan's
like signature thing?
Yeah, Toasties. Yeah, it's I would say I think it's ranked as the number 5 Guinness pour in Dublin.
Yeah, just so much Guinness everywhere. Just so much Guinness.
You gotta have a pint.
and rain.
All right, well, and enough of us, I guess, chatting through our lovely trip, which, I'm happy to do again, and I'm sure we will. But we'll get into Lala Breach. So this is, oh, I got a fresh up here. Here's where the box comes in. This is kind of our replacement for the small batch series. It's much more emotive of Dingle as far as like the local area. So Lala Breach is a single malt. Lala meaning day of, Breach meaning Bridget. It's St. Bridget's Day. It's what the name is for. You'll also see it called in the old Irish in Bolg. And it's another thing where Lala Breach is a much more common name, but it originally has pagan kind of roots. You'll see on here St. Bridget's cross. If you're in school in Ireland, you're gonna on St. Bridget's Day, you're gonna take all the straws, you're gonna weave them together. You'll see them in some Irish pubs around, kind of hang on the wall. It's kind of something everybody does. St. Bridget being the patron saint of Ireland, I believe, or that might be St. Patrick, but St. Patrick was not really Irish. He was more like Anglo guy that got sent over. So I believe St. Bridget is the patron saint of Ireland. I could be wrong there, but I've definitely heard that from someone. This is number 2 in the Celtic Wheel of the Year series. So it's a little bit easier to see on the label. So I'll hold that up when we chat through here. You'll kind of see this whole thing, all the different symbols around that circle. This is number 2 in the release. It's technically number 3 in the Celtic calendar. We started with kind of going, it's about a 2.5 year cycle that we're doing these around about once every quarter or so, with the 9th one being for St. Bridget's or St. Stephen's Day. I'll find the name for that in Irish, but all the names are pretty much in their native Irish. Starting with Samhain, which is just Halloween. It's the start of the Celtic New Year. This is the second release, being again Lala Breach, but you do have the winter solstice in the middle. So starting with Samhain on Halloween, that it would be the first holiday and first big milestone in the Celtic calendar. Number 2 being the winter solstice. Number 3 being Lala Breach. Number 4 being the spring equinox. Number 5 being Bealtaine, which is the start of spring. Number 6 being the summer solstice. Number 7 being Lunasa, which is kind of the start of fall, the harvest season, what have you, followed by the fall equinox. And that gets you the full way around the year. So as I said before, Dingle is very much tied to their local roots. Being a Gaeltacht region, they have a lot of pagan traditions still around. There's actually a local druid. She's lovely. She was at the Samhain celebration, did a nice little ceremony for us there. It's really a nod. This whole series is a nod. It's a collector series, but it is a nod to the local heritage and the kind of local Celtic tradition, the local Irish tradition, and that's kind of how this whole calendar is laid out. There are Irish names for the spring equinox, and fall equinoxes, and summer and winter solstices. I can probably say one of them, but I will certainly show you all of them as far as how they run through, just so you can see how they're spelled. In Bolg is Lala Breach, St. Bridget's Day. The same thing, one and the same. But that's the old Irish name. Lala Breach being the kind of more traditional Catholic one. It's just the reason they chose that versus in Bolg is it's a much more common name for it, especially in Ireland, which is their home market. So this little series marks our first cast finished whiskeys. So everything was just matured and then married, whatever barrel it was in before, as opposed to being started in a bourbon barrel and started in one barrel and finished in another. So this spends about 5-6 years in a bourbon barrel ex-bourbon cask from Heaven Hill, and then another 2 years. And in this one, it is a rye cask. Those casks are Sagamore rye, just for the reference. So you definitely get some butterscotch. That's so lovely about the bourbon cask that they're using first fills. You get a lot more of that expression. You get a lot more of that kind of more vanilla driven note that you're going to find on a bourbon cask, but it just expresses itself in a lovely way. They're relatively fresh. They are lighter. They are more nuanced, I would say, than some other heavy hitting kind of big bold flavor whiskeys. But you definitely get some of that kind of butterscotchy, you know, a little bit of baking spices in the back end, getting that rice spice coming through in the finish. And this to me almost drinks more like a pot still whiskey, just given the spice in the back end, which you know, is a nice touch. So I love this whole series. It's it goes, you know, thankfully I have you know, things to sample out for media and things like that. Unfortunately, I don't have as many as I probably should because they've made their way home with me. I love them. They're delicious. They're in across the board, whether it's the pot still or single malt, they're lovely. At this point, I think we're gonna end up doing 5 single malts and 4 pot stills. So the Celtic Wheel of the Year, it'll mirror itself in some form. It won't be exact, but the first one, Samhain, ex-bourbon cask, single malt, finished in Muscatel. This one being single malt finished in a rye cask. We will still also have a single pot still at some point that's finished in a Muscatel cask and a single pot still finished in a rye cask. So anything that's a single malt finished in that barrel, we're gonna have the same thing in pot still, and that's gonna kind of round out the series. I think the last one's going to be a single malt number 9. But that's whether we only have about, I don't know, 1,500 bottles here in the US every year, or for any given release. I just saw your text. Yeah, look, we'll get there. We're only on our second release here. Bealtaine is going to be out in May. So we're still getting started here.
So we're just the 2. We're just Lalabreed and Samhain. That's it.
Yeah, Samhain was first, and then as we get to next year, so we release it once every quarter, but there's 2 holidays a quarter. So next year we're going to be hitting the equinoxes and the solstices. So we're doing. They're not all Firefest, but 3 of them are. Samhain being probably the most notable, and Bealtaine the other one. Those are kind of 2 big fire festivals within the calendar. So the first 4 are like the more fire-centric fire festival things. With Samhain, they'll typically have 2 bonfires during celebration. You walk through it. It's the time of the year when the veil between the living and the dead is the thinnest, which is how Halloween kind of came about, and that whole thing. But it's that was kind of a cleansing practice. Was fire was you know, a more cleansing than it was you know, something to be feared. But still to be feared because you light your house on fire, it burns down, right? So but that was the, you know, the whole thing was, I think they like let a cow or a goat or something like that through the fire. There's a ton of lore associated with it. I just bought a couple books on the Celtic series that I found. I can share the link if you'd like to. I don't get any credit for it or any funds. They're short little pieces, and it covers, you know, a lot of Celtic culture. You know, whether that's you know, in Scotland, there's, you know, a lot of bleed over. Actually, the first Scots were Irish folks that were conquerors. So first, I guess you would say on that one. But there you have it.
So I just went through all of my local shops that I normally frequent. Where would someone go if they wanted to start the collection when you're only 2 in, so that you can have the whole collection?
Yeah, so California, we got the first one a little bit behind. So you'll be able to get it you should be able to get it on Dingle's website right now. If you don't, I would check back in 2 weeks, be able to get both of them. They ship out of California. It's out of Folsom Minded Spirits in Sacramento.
Right.
We have a partnership with them, so you'll be able to get them all there. Folsom Minded Spirits, that's your one-stop shop. You want to be able to get them. If it's not there now, it will be, and you'll be able to buy off that. They just got a couple cases in. Southern, our distributor, is lovely, but they can be a little bit slow in the uptake, especially with these releases. So if you have any questions, you know, you can feel free to email me or text me. You feel free to give out my phone number. It's no problem to me. So there you go.
I think the one interesting thing that blew my mind when we were at the distillery was how I was super excited to go there to learn about the whiskey, and anyone who was Irish and local was just there for the vodka and the gin. That apparently the locals, they're just drinking vodka and gin. They're not interested in the whiskey. Where like everyone in this room is just nerding out on how amazing and delicious this whiskey is.
Well, to be fair, because they started, you know, in 2012, but did all their maturation themselves, you know, for a long time, and this would be in the States as well. They're more known for the vodka or the gin. Certainly the gin here stateside.
And
The
their
whiskey's
vodka gin is
relatively
fantastic. So
absolutely. They're relatively new, new things for us as far as, having year-round whiskey. We're only a year into that. So again, kind of the pitfalls of being patient is the fact that we, are only now getting, what we really want to do, which is our whiskey portfolio out there. So we got a lot of stuff on the, on the frontier. We're going to have some single barrels coming out in the US and things like that. So a lot of exciting stuff ahead on the whiskey front, but to be fair, most people, would know us for our gin, or vodka. And they're both lovely, lovely pieces. I guess you brought up the gin, not me, just for the record. So, with that, it is a very unique. If you like gin, definitely go try it. We have about 6 local and 7 more international, you would say, botanicals in there. 6 of them will be found maybe not immediately around the distillery, but certainly in Ireland. Rowan Berry, Heather, and God, what's the other one? Why can't I think of it? Bog Myrtle. Those would be kind of the 3 mainstays that would be pretty unique for us. Bog Myrtle being a really beautiful flower that grows in a really ugly place and has a really ugly name, but it's very beautiful when it blooms. And that's one of our botanicals that you'd find pretty close to the distillery as well.
is that her from Harry Potter? Something Myrtle, something.
You're thinking of, I think it's the ghost who screams in the bathroom. Moaning Myrtle. There you go. Thanks, Jason.
Now I've got the Dingle batch 4, 5, and 3, 4, and 5.
Sure. You won't be able to
And
get 6 here unless you go to Ireland, unfortunately. I wasn't in charge of the brand then. I would certainly like to get it here, but those are all the single malts. Yeah.
yeah, they are very good. I love them all.
I just finished my last bottle of batch 3, which was at the time my favorite. I've changed tune there, but yeah, they're great. They've been making great whiskey from the start.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Okay, so Hunter, real quick, just
Yeah.
a correction. Saint Bridget is one of 3 patron saints of Ireland,
Okay.
but she's the only one of the 3 that's actually native to Ireland.
Fair enough.
Saint Patrick, fun fact, is not actually a saint because the Pope in Rome never
Canonized him?
canonized him, right?
No kidding.
Anyway, he's still Saint Patrick to everybody. And then Imbolc or Lulla Bridge is basically the first day of spring in the Irish calendar. So
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's February 1st is the date for that. So we're just past it now.
right, and it's not so much that it's tied to the sun and the equinox and all that. It's more that it's like, okay, the days are getting a little bit longer and there's hope for us, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of the first day of spring in that way. It's like their brains are coming out of the fog of winter and everybody's
For sure. Yeah, you're like, you made it through, had enough food, you had enough warmth to make it through winter. And here we are, kind of days are getting longer, all that stuff. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Very cool. I appreciate that. Quick touch on single malt, just a brief history lesson before we get into this Writer's Tears cast strength, or rather, while important, I'll kind of touch on single malt in Ireland. So apologies if I've had been on this soapbox before, but I'll get on it again. Ireland was, you can look at it however you want. Basically the Olympic stills in North Africa, taking perfumes and spirits that were made on Olympic still that were basically distilled for perfumes is likely how the Irish or the Scots got whiskey over to the British Isles rather, and that's where whiskey became Ishkabaha, what we know as whiskey today. Single malt, as far as it can't be proven, or at least not, we don't necessarily need to prove it, I guess. Not necessarily, one or the other first. I'm not going to kind of go down that rabbit hole here today, but from just a pure commercial aspect, Ireland was the largest exporter of single malt whiskey in the world in the 1700s and early 1800s until about 1850s or so. And the kind of really the advent of the column still, the coffee still, as we know it. So people very much today associate single malt with Scotland, and there's no problem with that. There's some of the greatest in the world. But with that being said, the Irish were originally known for being, the originators of single malt and the leaders in the world. In fact, in those days, being part of the Commonwealth of the United Kingdom, wherever the British Empire sailed, they took Irish whiskey with them until really the move for independence and the embargo that came with it. So one of the largest whiskeys in Russia at the time was the preferred whiskey of the Tsars back in those days. India, South Africa, still a huge market. Australia, you name it, any Commonwealth country was buying Irish single malt. And so there's a really rich history of single malt within Ireland. The whole reason single pot still became a thing was actually taxes. So you could actually, and I've accidentally, I think, given a master class on the evolution of single malt whiskey across the globe through the lens of British taxation. Single pot still is really no different. People have a lot of confusion about what is single pot still, what is versus single malt, right? So with that, I'm pouring myself some of that cask strength whiskey to get me through this. But what pot still is just a derivation of single malt whiskey. It started out as single malt. In those days, the Irish, they were taxed on the output of whiskey they were making. So any bottle that went out the door and went to a bar or into a consumer, that's where the tax instance happened. Unfortunately for the British government, people were about 30% plus of Irish whiskey production was being sold illicitly to what they call shebeens. A shebeen is basically just an Irish speakeasy. They were legal places. They had their own little pot stills, which is where poaching actually has its origins, is in those kind of little shebeens. So if you know poaching, barley spirit, it's basically Irish white dog made from 100% barley. That's where a lot of those bottles were being sold. About 30% of the volume was going through there, because I'm not going to tell the British government how much I'm producing if it's being sold illegally. So in order to kind of close that tax loophole, they're like, all right, we're just going to tax you for the malted barley that you're using to make whiskey. And by closing that loophole, the Irish, being the ingenuous folks that they are, they found a new loophole, which was using unmalted barley. So they started introducing unmalted barley into their mash. These days, there's a little bit of other stuff in there, but that's really where it was a cost-cutting and tax evasion footprint to start with that. And so they started using unmalted barley. And that's really how the origin of pot still started, was just the addition of unmalted barley to the mash bill of malted barley in order to avoid higher taxes on their whiskey. So it's the easiest way to think of single pot still or pot still whiskey is a derivation of single malt that's uniquely Irish because of the taxes that were input by the British government. So that was 1785, and so it's been evolving over the last couple hundred years, but that's really the origin of it. It's an offshoot of single malt, more or less. With that, I'll go to this cask strength. So again, 65% pot still whiskey in here. And I talked about what the mash bill makeup is. It's anywhere from, it has to be at least 30% unmalted barley, at least 30% malted barley, with 95% of that total mash bill being barley itself. So that's where the kind of creative license comes in for Irish distillers. Across the board, you can use a little bit of oats, you can use a little bit of corn. Oats is pretty common. You don't see wheat very often, but oats and corn would be probably the two most common varieties that are in there. But it doesn't mean you can't have 100% barley in the mash. And actually, any of our pot still that's coming out is 100% barley. So any whiskey we have here today, there's no corn, there's no oats, there's no barley in there. It is 100%. It is 100% barley in any of these mashes. So there you have it. What that unmalted barley does is it's going to create a different mouthfeel. It's also going to create a bit more spice in the finish. Raw barley, the unmalted barley, it tends to have a longer finish a lot of times, and not so much on this cask strength, but if you have a pot still whiskey, if you compare a pot still whiskey at 46, if it was just taking the same aging process in the same barrel as a single malt, you'd think that pot still whiskey has a higher ABV. The reason being that unmalted barley is going to add more spice to it. It's going to almost have a rye kind of finish to it. It's going to come across a touch hotter. And I find that really enjoyable. I think, as far as if you're making a cocktail at home, it's my preferred spirit for an old fashioned. Would be a pot still forward blend or just a pot still whiskey, just because you can kind of get some of that rye spice coming through there, similar in a kind of a through line without all that American sweetness up front. But you'll get more spice. You'll also get a rounder mouthfeel. It's a little bit thicker in texture. Those are the kind of qualities that unmalted barley is going to add to any whiskey that is a single pot still. So that mash bill is kind of has both a textural impact, but also kind of a finish impact in a big way. It's also typically a little chewier. In my experience, you can get a little bit more, like if you've ever taken a handful of raw barley and smelled it, you get a little bit more of that aroma, you get more of that kind of flavor without the texture being thicker. I also have described a pot still whiskey as being chewy in and of itself, and not in a tannin kind of situation, but more in like that raw grain situation. So that's my spiel about the whole deal. You have a cask strength whiskey. This is our newest release, 2023. 2024 vintage won't come until around October of this year. What that is if you've had Writer's Tears Copper Pot, it's our best selection of, call it 4 or 5 barrels in any given year. We bottle that up, keep it at cask strength. What I get, if you're familiar with Copper Pot versus this, you get a lot more mid palate. I think just having that higher ABV and up in those 50s, you get a little bit more of a complete front to back palate experience. You still get those orchard fruits, although they are a bit richer here. And also you'll get a bit more ginger spice. That's both coming from the pot still aspect at cask strength, but also just having that more unadulterated flavor profile, if you will. At some point, by the way, remind me, I know we're done with Dingle, but we might have a bit of a fun kind of pronunciation game if people want to give it a shot on some of these other Irish names for the equinoxes. That might be a fun way to go to do some things. So remind me if I don't remember that we should get to that. This is always a delicious whiskey. I think it's pretty quintessential Irish, like just cask strength Irish whiskey. If you're gonna think of like a really high quality Irish whiskey, this hits all the high notes for me. It's got that ginger spice, it's got that bright green orchard fruit, and it's still smooth as hell. I mean, the triple distillation a lot of times is looked down upon, especially from your single malt Scotch purists, and there's no harm in that, but the Irish would look at it differently. I've heard master distillers say you don't want to fight your whiskey on the way down, or you don't want to fight with your whiskey on the way down, and that's kind of the impetus behind the tradition of triple distillation. I will note both Irish and Scotch, single malt, and on the Irish side, pot still can either be double or triple distilled. So while Scotland 95% making up numbers, but roughly 95% of production. The only distillery I know that's not really doing it in a big name is Auchentoshan, would be double distilled. And Ireland's kind of the opposite. I think Kilbeggan, Connemara, those would be two of kind of more well-known brands that would be doing double distillation versus everybody else being triple. So it doesn't mean there's a lot of experimentation happening right now. Which is the fun part of Irish whiskey these days. We haven't launched anything, but we have done double distillation at Dingle. I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day from a commercial perspective, but we have done that over at Dingle, as well as a peated whiskey at to boot. So none of those may ever see a bottle, but we do have barrels that are filled with that spirit. So. Any questions on that? I think that's a really nice baseline. Sorry, go for it. Sorry, Tony.
I just said it's very good. I love it. And my local Total Wine is sold out.
Well, if you ask them, they might be. Where are you in? You're in LA?
No, I'm in Northwest Florida.
For the record, I get that wrong every time, Tony. I'm sorry.
Everybody.
It wouldn't be a tasting with me unless I asked you where you're living right now. And it's Florida every time. So there you go. But sorry to hear that. They should be able to get some. So if you do request it, I think in Florida in particular, we still have a couple cases of 2023 hanging around. But rest assured, 2024 will come again. So
Thank you.
you got it. 1,500 bottles is about what we get in the U.S. every year. So.
And as Jordan pointed out, this is the one that comes in this beautiful wooden box. So if you're looking for a good Irish gift, as a lot of people are, this is a good one to go with.
Love that plug. Thank you. That's great. What do we have next? A Japanese cask, I said, right?
Is Attorney Bogan over there getting water deliveries? I want a water delivery. Spoiled. We are on Japanese cask, yes, sir. The one that we will be raffling off at the end of the night.
Damn straight.
Yes. That's amazing. Well, it's not Writer's Tears, but I do have this little fancy hand blown made by. It looks actually kind of a little bit like a piece, but it's a little water dropper here from our folks over at Glencairn. They did all that themselves. So I'm lucky to have that. But if you do want a proof down, I missed on the last one, but now's your chance. There's no shame in that. So with that being said, I am very partial to this next whiskey. I think it's damn near my favorite whiskey out in my portfolio, at least, and that's saying a lot because I have a lot of great whiskey. But this is our Japanese Mizunara cask. So this spends about 6 years in an ex-bourbon cask, and then we finish it in Japanese Mizunara. If you don't know Mizunara oak, it is its own species. I don't know the Latin name for it, so forgive me there. But it is distinct from American oak and European oak. Mizunara oak, they started kind of, you've had Yamazaki 12 or really a lot of other Japanese whiskeys. When I guess would have been around World War II, they had this, by necessity, had to start aging their own whiskeys in Mizunara oak. That's kind of how people started aging whiskey in Mizunara. If you look at Yamazaki 12, I think about 6% of their whiskey is finished in Mizunara oak. It's a pain in the ass to work with, though. It's very tight grain, so you get a lot of extraction, but you have to have the right conditions in order to make that happen. But it is super leaky as a barrel. It's not great for barrel construction. If you put it in your distillery, you're gonna have a puddle below it. It's more than just angel share. It's not evaporation. It's literally just falling out the bottom. So you can't. It's really tough to do a long aging in a Mizunara barrel, and you wouldn't necessarily want to do it because it is so tight grain. You get a lot of it imparts a lot of flavor, and I think that's why people have kind of recently fell in love with Mizunara casks, and myself included, because of that tight grain, because of that oak. You get different notes than you would from a European oak or a wine cask, especially, or American oak and bourbon cask and things like that. You get more of those kind of almost like a sandalwoody, like it's very, like, for me, comforting. It's almost, cedar's a bad way to put it because cedar is such a harsh note and you wouldn't want your whiskey to taste like cedar. But as far as just like having rich, earthy wood kind of notes coming through your whiskey, it's what does it for me. If you haven't already figured out, besides me just saying so, I clearly love this whiskey. It starts about 7 years and 6-7 years in ex-bourbon cask. It's finished over about 12-18 months in first fill new Mizunara oak casks. If you go to our warehouse currently right outside Kilkenny and right over the border in County Carlow, you can see the barrel sitting there. So as far as our special LTOs within Walsh, it is finished in our warehouse, and therefore, because it has its own warehouse, it has its own unique kind of terroir and its own unique environmental factors going to play in its whiskey, which is why it makes it extra special as well. But It is finished at cask strength. We get about, let me think, let me do the math here, 1,200 bottles here in the US every year or so. So it's pretty limited. And we sell out every year. So that's why I'm not trying to push you towards K&L, but it shouldn't be that price. I don't want it to be that price. And some distributor probably made that deal to get that in there. But it shouldn't be anywhere under $130 typically, at a 55% ABV, and given its rarity. So, snatch it up while you got it, I guess. I might even buy a bottle. Yeah, there is a lovely spice here, Amanda. Absolutely spot on. But
Yeah, I think I'm just going to take a guess here, and I'd love to get feedback from the group, but I would say that Mizunara oak is so distinct that I would say 99 times out of 100, any one of us could say that was Mizunara oak finish, because it's so distinct, I think. But it has that, it's kind of an earthy wood, it's sandalwood, like you say, earthy wood kind of flavor to it. And I'd say, either you love it or find it intriguing, or I'm guessing there's going to be some people who really don't like it, but I'm intrigued by it. And I just think the Irish whiskey in this is really just makes for a really interesting drink. Like I have to sit and think about it, when I drink it. It's really great.
thanks, kid. I love to hear that. And it's truly it's a fantastic whiskey, to your point. Like, it's one of the few things that sits in my bar that I actually have to wait for the next iteration to come out. I have plenty of whiskey at home, thankfully, but I don't make it through more than a few months with this sitting at home, because I find myself pouring it over and over again. It's just delicious. And to your point, in my portfolio especially, there's not a whiskey that I have that's like it. It's very unique. Again, when you put it in that special oak, it is a totally different species. And that it has, it's like, for me, it's spectacular. So I'm glad you're also enjoying it. If you don't like Mizunara oak, I don't know who you are, and that's okay. But I'd be hard pressed to say it's not delicious. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Exactly.
Mizunara. It's one of my favorite finishes just in the whiskey world. Is almost anytime I see something finished in Mizunara, I'm probably going to pick up a bottle of it.
Yeah, I definitely want to try it, right? Absolutely.
So if you're one of those people who just don't like it, trust me, you can send it to me and I'll be very happy about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's got a rather intriguing, almost egg custard right on the top note as you first sip it. And it's
Just that sweetness kind of coming
Yeah.
through, for sure.
It's
Yeah.
also the mouthfeel, it's that silky smooth and that buttery, custardy kind of flavor. And just any Mizunara that I've ever had has some of that characteristic to it. It's just, I think this is probably one of my favorites that I've tried. It's so good.
It's delicious. I appreciate you saying so. So thanks for that. Yeah, someone brought up the long finish. From start to end on this whole thing, it's just a total palate experience. Across the board. And I think having that pot still kind of base, having that big part of that mash bill, it helps extend it all the way through the finish. And that's what does it for me. So yeah, no, I love it. 55% too. Again, going back to that smoothness of Irish whiskey, Irish triple distillation. It goes down way too damn easy. And that's why it doesn't last too long in my back bar. So there you go.
The interesting thing about it, when I was first learning how to cook years ago, somebody's talking about salt and the importance of salt, and that when you properly salt something, it just makes whatever you're cooking taste more like itself. And the Mizunara, though it does have its own flavor, don't get me wrong, part of what I think I like about it is it just makes it taste more like itself, in addition to something different. It enhances all the flavors. So it's like this weird thing where it's not quite a double oak, because that's a different thing, but it somehow makes it taste more like it and adds a little something. Yeah, it's one of my favorite bottles. It's one of my favorite finishes, but this particular expression is one of my favorite by far.
I like that comment. You know, you're tossing, you're doing a little Emerald Bam on there. You know, you're making it, you know, you're making it its own, but also accentuating the rest of everything that's going on. So no, that's a great point. If you are, if you know, look, I know, and this just made me think. So it's totally a left turn, as it goes. But if you are making an espresso martini, and at home, whatever base spirit you're using, a lot of people use vodka. You can certainly kind of flip those out as you like. But if you do make one, throw a touch of salt in there. It actually makes it, like, if you like chocolate, it makes it go super dark chocolate, and fun. Not that we're living in the 90s anymore, but it is back in vogue. So I've been tasting enough espresso martinis. We have an espresso liqueur via Luxardo, so we've done some ideation around there, and that just kind of sent me that direction. So apologies for the harsh digression, but I had to say something. But thanks, Jordan. It's always a pleasure to have you jump on. I always appreciate your commentary, especially. So
No, and I like the diversion because it meant it made you think something. So I enjoy that. Thank you.
absolutely.
Have y'all looked at any Garyana cask at all?
Not at Writer's Tears. We may have at Dingle. I don't know for sure. I don't even know if they know for sure. To be honest. But it's, you know, I don't, not that I know of, off the top of my head. Going back to Dingle, just as far as her barrel selection, kind of to that point, it's about 80%, roughly 40-40, kind of fluctuating back and forth. Sherry and bourbon, a lot of it PX sherry for that matter. There's a bit of Oloroso in there, some Palo Cortado, a little bit of Amontillado as well, but just kind of as a general category, sherry cask. 10% port, and then the other 10 is, you know, who knows? A whole collection. We got some quarter casks in there, some Madeira, some what have you. Acacia wood, I think, has even been used. That's the kind of, again, I mentioned triple versus double distillation, Scotch versus Irish malts or Irish pot still. Another thing is Scotch has to be aged in oak. Whatever oak species of oak that is, it has to be aged in an oak barrel. Irish whiskeys has to be aged in wood, any type of wood. So you can do you'll see some acacia casts out there, some other kind of weird, funky things, chestnut even. I think it's really weird. A lot of those whiskeys come out, but at least it allows for fun experimentation. So I'm glad you brought that up because it made me think of that. So thanks, Tony. All right, should we finish off with a 17-year-old and then we'll get into the name game, I guess, a little bit?
Yeah, let's do that. As everybody pours the 17-year, this is an expression I absolutely love.
Did we skip the
I invite
regular
everyone
cast
to
strength?
jump. What's up?
Did we skip the regular cast strength Writer's Tears? Did I miss that?
No, cast
I
strength
think
is
you missed
before
it.
Japanese.
No, my bad.
I wasn't very explicit about my pouring. I think I was kind of waxing poetically on my own soapbox over here, but I think I briefly mentioned it, so sorry.
We tasted the cast strength right before the Japanese.
Gotcha. That cast strength is also on sale at K&L, by the way.
We'll talk
Go
about
girl.
local southern and see what's going on.
As we pour the 17-year-old Irishman, I invite everyone to jump on camera and join us for just a second. Before you down this amazing liquid, this is my favorite special dram of kind of the best Irish whiskey as kind of affordable. Hey, look at that. There's two people in that one. Lucas, Cesar, Luis. Come on, Shane, come back. Trying to get everybody in. Sorry. Give me a second. Give it another 3 seconds and then we'll, but there we go. We got one. Woohoo! There we go. Pour yourself a glass. Join us. Smile to the camera. And thanks to you, Hunter, and these amazing brands. Thank you for spending the evening with us. This has been absolutely stupendous. And we look forward to this every year, or at least I do. I know everybody else does. But cheers. Smile to the camera.
Wancha.
Beautiful. I love that Shane's always got a glass in his hand and smiling to the camera every time. Luis is back. All right, one more time. Everybody smile. Got it. Perfect. Tell us more,
So
17-year-old.
yeah, so I did switch glassware for this.
Is
I,
that a
I would
breaking
say I
difference?
don't know why, but the only difference is because the rest of my tuas are in the dishwasher. So I also love this glass. It's a Denver and Lively glass. I think I bring it up every time. It's one of my favorite whiskey glasses. It's most versatile one I have. But for a cask strength whiskey, it gets a bit more air. And the nice thing is you get, again, convex glass, as you can see. I get a ton of nuttiness from this. It's 100% aged in Oloroso sherry. You get some of those, really nice, backbone of those orchard fruits. This is quintessential of Irish whiskey, but it gets that kind of Oloroso nuttiness. You'll find out a little bit more on some, Scotch single malts or even some other whiskeys as well. But you definitely pick up more of that kind of almost like almondy, nutty flavor right on the nose. But yeah, hazelnut, that's a great call. Absolutely, a little bit of that, the kind of sweeter nut. But it's really a special whiskey. We do 1 barrel of this in the US every year. So this is 22 vintage, 2019, 2020, 2021. So this is our 4th cask here, stateside. So we end up getting about, I don't know, on a good day, since the sherry butt a little bit larger, 80 cases, 86 packs out of it. On a good day, anywhere from 50 to 80. I mean, one difference is the nice thing about Ireland being relatively more temperate is you're going to get a lot less angel share. So if you were going to have a comparable single cask in the US, you'd probably get more like 50, 56 packs out of it. So just if you've heard that from American whiskey, it's a lot more to do with the angel share than it is to do with the actual cask. But bourbon barrels are about 25 liters less than a sherry butt. So there you have it. We do an Oloroso sherry full maturation every year, cask strength every year, about that 55, 56%. This was when our inaugural release. It was the #1 Irish whiskey within Ireland. That was a huge accolade for us. I mean, among the Irish Whiskey Association, it was named the best of the best. And so we kind of take that and run with it a little bit. The whiskey hasn't gotten any worse for sure. It's always 17-year-old. Sorry, my dog's in the background, just having a time. This was until recently the oldest whiskey that we had put out with the Irishman. The other one went exclusively to Kilkenny, and it was a Chateauneuf de Pop finished single malt. I've only tasted out of a barrel. I will never see that liquid again, and I'm very mad about it. But this is our next best thing, and we do release this every year. We get 1 barrel guaranteed in the US, and I love it. So hopefully you're enjoying it as well.
And I
So-
will say, looking at this year's versus the one that I had from a couple of years ago on the old bottling, such a huge color difference. And they're both 100% sherry cask, single cask, but the old
Oloroso, yeah.
so much lighter in color.
I just wanted to say,
This one?
so Hunter, you're killing me, right? Because we just had the Mizunara cask, which was awesome, and now you've given us this 17-year-old Irishman, and I don't know that I could pick. I say this because I know Vadim is going to give us do a poll, and we're going to have to pick which one we like best. Oh, it's too hard to pick.
Love to have that problem, for one, and number two, the nice thing is they are so different, right? I think they can live on their own. As you know, they're not fighting with each other as far as it goes. I think it's different occasions as far as what you're preferring, and they're both lovely in their own right. But if you have to pick one, it's always tough, and I'll waffle between the two. Often, to be fair, as rare as it is that I have the Japanese Mizunara cask at home, I have this even less. We have such a more limited quantity here that I don't get to enjoy as much as I'd like to. So. Well, I got to vote.
Yes, you do.
That was an easy one for me.
So yeah, so what I was saying was the old bottling is a lot lighter than the new bottling. The new bottling is a lot darker.
You know, it's funny, that can just have to do with where it is in the warehouse. Purely. We've had some vintages that just like, and this is actually, if you know Old Pulteney, and if you see the 15-year-old out there, I don't know if it's still out there, but this one single year versus every other year, it was just like worlds darker. It wasn't necessarily better, but it was in this specific part of the warehouse that, whereas whatever it was getting a lot more color extraction for this one single barrel. So
I'm having a moment here with a 17-year-old. It is amazing. Oh my God. There's a reason this is my top Irish whiskey of the year every year. This is so fucking good.
Love to hear it.
Doing all this talking, and I'm just, oh my God, having a moment. Oh,
You know,
the
Vadim, in
nuttiness
some
and
states
everything.
you could get in trouble for that.
Whiskey. Elijah's not here. There's no poetry. We're good. All right, 14 out of 17 people voted. And then we're gonna do our second poll. You gotta pick one as your favorite pour of the night. Go ahead. Sorry, Hunter. I didn't mean to cut you off. This is absolutely
No, you're good.
spectacular.
I'm shutting my mouth here. It's all right.
No, this is I remember it being good, and then I finally tasted it, and it's just so much better than I remember it being. Especially this one being just a fresh pour off a new bottle. This is the
To be
one that
fair,
Fantastic.
this is
Yeah,
the
the-
hardest question I've had in a long time, by the way. It's like I've had 4 years with these brands now, since joining you guys, and it's definitely like picking a favorite child. About 4 of them are easy to pick out, but then beyond there, it's a tough one. As I think it's a lot like children in itself as well, right? So
I met a young airman today at the American Legion from County Kerry is where her heritage comes from. So she's getting my leftovers from every bottle Saturday because she's going to be down there doing like a little food pantry thing.
very cool. Very nice. Well, appreciate that.
Well, we
Everybody
appreciate
does,
it.
right?
Yeah.
You want to show those results, and then I'll jump into this kind of pronunciation. I don't know about contest, but you can, as you will.
Last 3 votes. Anybody missing out? Everybody voted for the favorite of the night. All right. I'm gonna close this down. 3, 2, 1. Hunter, you got to take a guess. What do you think was the favorite expression of the night?
Japanese. All right.
It was a
I still
stop.
got it. Still got it.
The 1 vote, but 6 people voted for Japanese, 5 voted for the 17-year, and then Redhead is 3rd place with
That's
Casper
great.
following behind. That's pretty amazing. Wow.
There you go.
I
Gotta
mean,
love
that
it.
was a tough choice.
Not for me.
Yeah,
I don't get to
fantastic.
vote.
We're all good whiskeys, right? There you go.
They're all fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, how can you choose between perfection?
You're talking about me, right? Thank you so much. Me and
No,
Hunter? All right,
Whatever,
cool.
whatever you want.
I just grabbed my founder's reserve of the Irishman
Mhm.
Oloroso,
Yeah.
and I'm just giving it a taste now. It's a little late. I should have tasted it earlier, but yeah. Anyway, I can taste the Irishman in it. It's
Nice.
pretty distinct. So yeah.
Speaking of Irishman and underrated bottles, I have a bottle of Irishman 12 single malt. Oh my God. If you want to really blow somebody away with like really great entry level, this is 43%. So it's not gonna burn. And this is my understanding is 100% ex-bourbon cask. So it's like the exact opposite of the 17. It's low proof, 100% bourbon cask. But this
Yep.
is stupendous. This is so good.
It's like I definitely one of the more savory whiskeys I think in the portfolio as well, just from and I think it's really fun. A lot of times I'll do the 12 versus 17 because you get that kind of you get the richness, like it like the 17's like going to like this crazy rich, big Michelin meal, and the 12-year-old's like this understated, just wonderful whiskey that you can just get behind, and it's fraction of the price as well. The 12-year-old is very near and dear to my heart. That's another one. Well, all the whiskeys go pretty quickly here, but that's another one that I get behind.
What is the what's the cost of the 17 year? Roughly.
About 160, 170.
Okay.
So $10 a year. I'd put this up against
$10 a year. There you go.
any sherried scotch. I'd put this up against it full on, and I think that's a fair price for what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as it goes, for an 18-year-old scotch, 150 is probably the going rate for 150, 160, but they're not cask strength, they're not a single fill, and they're not, there's a lot that give that more of that, kind of pedigree, I would say, behind it.
Yeah.
The only other Irish that's cask strength that I would put up against this is a 27-year-old, and that's about $20 to $25 a year now. So
Yeah.
It's $159.99 at K&L.
There you go.
throwing that all over.
Is that yellow label, by the way?
Is it the old bottle or the new bottle?
K&L, the picture's the old bottle, and I assume it is because the 12 expressly says new packaging or new package.
Fair enough.
All right. So now that we've had 6 ounces of amazing Irish whiskey in us, what are you gonna have us say?
All right, so I'm going to give you the first 4 for free. How about that? All right.
I like that.
So, but those are the easiest ones.
Oprah Hunter is coming back. I like it.
That's right. All right. So this is Samhain right here. So again, Halloween. Am I showing the
You're showing the other side.
presentation screen? All right.
Yep.
Don't go away. Where do I swap this?
Mm-hmm.
Click display settings and then swap sides.
So just remember, everybody, you're not looking at an English spelling, you're looking at an Irish spelling. So if you tried to pronounce that in English, well, it's like reading a word in Spanish and pronouncing it in English. It's not right.
You say it in English.
Thank
too,
you,
everybody.
gracias.
So this guy right here, this is Samhain, just like SOWAIN, I guess, like Samhain.
Yeah, that's easy.
Right
Obviously, based on that spelling, obviously.
I'm gonna cover all the easy ones because I can. Do that. This is Lalla Breed. There's fun quick fact about that. Depending on what area of Ireland you're from, there's about 3 different pronunciations. We would say this Lalla Breed. The first way I heard it is Lalla Breege. So that's one of 2 ways, or 2 of 2 ways, rather 2 of 3. So there you have it. We'll work through that. And Bealtaine. So Bealtaine is like that's another one, start of spring, as I mentioned, or start of rather the summer season, as it were. Lunasa, which is start of the harvest period, and then we'll get into
I would have got that one.
Yeah, Lunasa
would have had it.
Yeah.
So quick anecdote here. When I was chatting through the Celtic Wheel of the Year series with the Dingle folks, I kept on calling this one Lunesta, which is definitely not correct. So finally I've gotten it online with Lunasa is how you say that. How would you say this one? Any takers?
I believe you have to have a mouthful of food to say this one.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Gronstad on Heimrich.
You're close on the first part. You're close in the first part.
I think Jane wants to take a crack at it. She got Irish roots. Come on, Kilkenny.
Gronstad.
You know what? It's the MH is kind of messing with my brain because
MH is a W.
I am
remember?
really out of practice on Irish. So
No, because it could be a V in this
that's
case.
what I was
it's
thinking
to an
is,
I. But some
Exactly.
people just pronounce it, don't even pronounce it. So
I was like,
it depends on the dialect.
Amanda's
The
a redhead.
official.
Do it.
Go for it. Give it a shot. Vadim.
Oh, hell no. Tony wanted to try it.
I was saying Grandstad, God, now I can't say it again. Heinrich.
Are these like German generals from World War II? What are we trying to do?
Yeah, I think so.
like
Yeah.
Gabri or something. Gabra.
Lori's got some green in her hair and red in the back. She's got this. She's got this on lock. I want to hear her say it. Lori, Amanda, one of you redheads got to do this.
I speak German. What can I tell you? I'll say Grandstadt ein Heimredad.
I love it. I love it.
We still end
but
there.
I'll-
We still end there.
Could be Grionstad and it could be Grionstad, Hybrid.
G-ring.
Hivra.
Gira would be I mean that'd be more Dublin centered, but Gridstad and Gira is what we're saying.
Gira.
That's
But in a different dialect, you wouldn't pronounce the G.
Hunter, I was on the tip of my tongue. I was about to
No.
say that, and you
No.
just cut me off. I had it right.
There's a lot of extra letters that they're not using.
Welcome
Fair
to
enough.
Irish.
So, a lot of times, when it comes down to it, like Ireland is very provincial when in their pronunciation. So I'm going with the general term, but I'm sure a fair amount of you are correct in your pronunciation as well. But that's the way we like to say Gridstad and Gira. I guess with that I'll move on to the next one. But there's 32 counties in Ireland, and they do all have their own unique accents as well. So what's correct today could be incorrect tomorrow, I guess.
Conad on era.
Yeah, that's close.
Yeah, that's it. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, showing them Irish roots.
But the emphasis is on Connacht, not it's not the other way around.
Connacht and Erig is what some would say as well. So
Oh, it's coming out March 21. Look at that.
So these dates are totally wrong. These are the Irish release dates. Add a year to this, and that's where we have them here stateside. So 2025. Sorry, I didn't edit this presentation exclusively for this thing. So so apologies there. The night I have pronunciation guides for these two. I don't know about the next two. So we're gonna give it a shot, and we're gonna go gut feeling.
That's Grandstad and Sira and Saura.
Sura.
Saura. So I've heard people say it. That is absolutely correct. Saura is absolutely how I've heard people say this. 100%. So I don't know. Winner, chicken dinner. It's just a fun thing. Well, I don't know this one either. So I do know the next one though.
When Sauron is released, will there be a ring attached to the bottle? There should be.
And one eye on top of Barad-dûr.
Yeah, perfect.
I think
This
this
is
Conad on fear.
Connacht and Faura.
Faura. I like that. That sounds on point as well. All right, last one.
Roland?
This is St. Stephen's Day, or the Day of the Wren, which is the little wren is Drillin.
On
Brilliant.
Drolin.
Drolin.
On Drellin.
Yeah.
Sla on Drellin, I believe.
Laundrowleen.
Adrenaline?
Andraline.
Yeah, on Drellin. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Sla on Drellin.
I wish, you know, what I should have done is Evan, who is their in-house Irish specialist, spelled Eimhin. Not I didn't know how to say it. I was like, oh, it's just Evan. As I guess he goes with it. But he's fluent in 6 languages and he's a native Irish speaker. He's the guy who gave me a lot of the pronunciations here. Unfortunately, it is, what time is it here? Anyways, it's 7 hours right now ahead there. So he couldn't join because it's in the middle of his sleep time. But maybe next time we can get him on to walk us through some of these. So there you go. But I love everybody's effort. It's just a fun bit of Irish for you. And I wish I had more. I used to have some favorite Irish phrases, but it's been about a year since I've been there. So with that, look, I know you know, you guys all took a Thursday night off to come join me in my babbling, but appreciate it. It's been a lovely round of whiskeys, and hopefully you got something from it. So appreciate the time, appreciate you guys joining, and hopefully you enjoyed. So
Hold on, Hunter, you can't
Thank you
leave
very
yet.
much, Hunter.
You can't leave yet.
I'm not leaving. I
You
just
you provided something for one lucky participant to take home with them.
oh yeah.
And considering that it was the number one pour of the night, I think it's a little appropriate. We have everyone who signed up is on this list, or should be. If you don't see yourself, you better speak up now.
I don't see my name.
You don't get to.
I
My
only see my
name's not
name
on
once.
there.
I'm not on here. Yeah, I can't win.
You missed me, Vadim. I'm not on there.
You're right. You're not on here. All right.
You're welcome.
Fine. Miss, I had to. Yeah, you're right. How many N's are in your name?
2,
Sorry, I'm like 6.
1 L, 1 E,
Me?
2 N's. Just
All right,
like
you're in there now. All right, 1, 2, 3. Shuffle.
million N's.
Okay, we're gonna roll this once, and winner gets it, and you're responsible for shipping.
Ah, I was robbed.
But you got to be here to win.
Awesome. Congrats, dude.
I saw him in here earlier, Luis or Luis. You're in here. Speak up. Tell me you're here.
Yep.
There you go. Congratulations.
Congrats.
We got a winner. All right.
Japanese cask heading your way.
That's a solid bottle. The winner of the night.
Jordan, you were robbed. That was so close.
Luckily, Jordan just picked one up.
Yeah, but
I
how much?
just
How much
got
did he
one.
pay you?
I don't know what I would have done. I would have given it to someone.
Sorry, what'd you say, Hunter?
I said, how much did he pay you to win that?
Nothing. He bought into the tasting and he was here. That's all it takes. Happy to have you.
I'm just kidding.
Congratulations. Make sure you message me to get your bottle, because if you don't, the 30-day rule applies as it does with all samples. If you don't pick it up in 30 days or make arrangements, I'm keeping it. But that said, yeah, as Hunter said, thank you all for spending the evening with us. This was a lot of fun. Hunter, thank you so much for being here with us. We all love you. This is great. Every year we look forward to this. We gotta have you on more often than this. I know it's been a tough year last year with delays and releases and whatnot. We gotta do this. We gotta do a special one for each brand and so on and so forth. I think people will come out for that.
Well, not to. I'm not committing to anything, but we will have Dave from Dingle down in LA probably in May. So
Okay.
maybe we get together face to face. So
We're about due. I think so. I think.
yeah, I'll chat with you next week on that.
Yeah,
if
would love to
that's
have
all
you.
right. So, but we're working on the logistics there. So that'd be fun.
Awesome. Well, any other questions from the group? No, everybody's good. All right, we'll kill the recording and call it a night and just hang out. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Cheers to you, and cheers to Irish whiskey.
There you go. Yeah, St. Patrick's Day is in almost 2 days, so let's launch.
Yeah,
Let's
go
launch it.
kiss an Irish.
Yeah.
I promised my
Okay,
daughter.
just mad dogs me
Taylor
while she
Swift
does
with her.
it. What was that?
I promised my daughter I go watch some Taylor Swift with her. So believe me, I'd rather be here. But
Lies.
I'll
It's not your first time. We know we
Aw.
like Taylor Swift.
That's
Yes,
being a
ma'am.
good dad.
It was
Jordan,
very,
talent of the century.
it's she, dude. I don't know if you guys watched the second season of The Bear, but the episode with the cousin with Taylor Swift was pretty. That was heartfelt. So come on.
All right.
All right, I'll see y'all later. Hopefully in May in person.
Nice.
Yes, sir.
We just had
You said
10,000
talent of the year, you meant Jordan, right?
Okay,
Agreed
wait,
to
wait.
Have all the recordings on.
Oh, 3, 2, 1, sorry.